She looked like the kind of woman the West had already decided wasn't going to make it. That was Silas Greer's first thought when he saw her come through the gate of the Double Pine Ranch on a Tuesday morning in late October of 1883, not riding, walking, leading a mule that looked nearly as worn as she did, and carrying on her back a pack that a man twice her size might have set down by now. She was young, 26, 27 maybe, with dark hair pinned up under a battered hat and the particular set to her jaw of someone who has made a decision and is not going to revisit it. Silas was 64 years old. He'd been ranching the Bitterroot Valley since before Montana was a territory, and he had a gift sharpened by those decades for reading people the way other men read weather. What he read in this woman was not desperation, exactly. It was something more deliberate than that. She wasn't fleeing, she was arriving. There is a difference, and it matters. His wife, Harriet, saw her first from the kitchen window and came to the door before Silas could wave the woman off, which he had been preparing to do. "Someone coming," Harriet said. "I see her." "She's got a mule." "I see that too." The woman stopped at the porch steps and looked up at them both without apology and without performance. She took off her hat, her face was sunburned and road-worn and entirely serious. "My name is Cora Finch," she said. "I've been riding since Missoula. I can see from the road that your hay barn roof is failing on the east side and your corral fence is down in the northwest corner. Your water line from the creek looks like it's running low pressure, probably a blockage about halfway up the run." She looked at Silas steadily. "I know horses, I know cattle, I know irrigation, and I know how a working ranch holds together and how it falls apart. If you let me stay, I'll work for room and board until you tell me I've earned more." Silas looked at her. "Why would I need a hand I don't know?" "Because winter's 6 weeks out and you're short one," Cora said. "I can see that from here too." Harriet said nothing, but Silas felt her watching him the way she always watched him when she'd already made up her mind and was waiting for him to catch up. He was going to say no. He had said no to drifters before, and for good reasons that experience had confirmed. A man 2 years back had taken a horse and $40 and left in the night. Another had drunk himself sideways inside a week. A woman alone, traveling without a man, without references, with nothing but a tired mule and a list of things she'd observed from the road. No, the word was forming, reasonable and practiced. And then, from the direction of the north pasture, came a sound. Not the usual low complaint of cattle moving toward water. This was something sharper, a horse in trouble, the high, carrying call of an animal that has gone down and cannot get itself up. Silas knew that sound the way he knew his own name. Cora Finch heard it at the same moment. She turned toward it before he could speak. "Which pasture?" she said. "North." He didn't know why he answered. She was already moving, dropping her pack by the porch post, unwrapping the lead from the mule. "Do you have a rope on the barn door?" "Left side." She went. No waiting, no looking back to see if he approved. Silas stood on the porch for 3 seconds and then went after her. The horse was a gray mare named Pearl, and she had gone down in a muddy low point near the creek crossing, back left leg, caught in a loop of old fencing wire that must have been buried and worked itself up through the mud. She was panicking in the way that kills horses, the useless violent struggling that tires them and worsens the injury. Silas had seen horses die this way. He'd lost one 15 years ago. He'd never forgotten the sound. Cora went to her head first, not to the leg, not to the wire, to the head. She got down in the mud beside the mare without hesitation and put both hands on the horse's face and leaned in close, talking in a low, continuous voice that Silas couldn't make out at that distance. It was not the voice a person uses to calm an animal down. It was more like the voice a person uses when they are telling someone something true, something that matters. Pearl's struggling slowed further, stopped. Then and only then Cora moved to the leg. She worked the wire off with the rope for leverage and her hands for precision, talking the whole time. And when it was done, she stood the mare up slowly and walked her in a small circle, watching how she bore weight, checking the leg with her fingers. "She'll be sore for a few days," Cora said when Silas reached her. "No permanent damage if you keep her off hard ground and check the leg morning and evening. There's a piece of wire still in the mud there, she pointed. You'll want to pull it before it catches something else. Silas looked at Pearl, looked at Cora, looked at his horse standing quiet and whole when 10 minutes ago she had been going down. There's a room off the tack shed, he said. It's not much. Cora nodded. It's more than I had last night. Supper's at 6, Harriet said from somewhere behind him, which meant she had followed them both out and been watching the whole thing, which also meant the conversation was already decided. Yes, ma'am. I won't be late. She wasn't late. She came to the table clean, with her hair repinned and the mud gone from her boots, and she ate without excess and spoke when spoken to and listened more than she talked. She asked where the back pasture ran in spring and which corner of the high meadow went to clay in August. The questions of someone making a map. Learning the land the way you learn a person, by paying attention to what they tell you without meaning to. Harriet watched her and said nothing. Silas answered every question. That was how it began. In the weeks that followed, Cora Finch proved useful the way certain people are useful, not because they make a performance of effort, but because they simply see what needs doing and do it. She fixed the barn roof in 3 days, working from first light, moving across the high pitch, with a steadiness that made Harriet stop watching out of fear and start watching out of something closer to admiration. She rebuilt the pressure line from the creek, locating the blockage, a collapsed elbow joint 60 yards up the run. By listening to the pipe, she said, the way you listen to a person's breathing to know where something's wrong. She was extraordinary with horses. That was the word Silas turned over in his mind when he watched her work his string. Not good, not skilled. Extraordinary in the original sense, outside of what is ordinary. She had a quality of attention around horses that was different in kind from what most people possessed. A stillness that wasn't passive. It was more like the stillness of someone who has learned that presence, real presence, not performance, is the most powerful thing you can offer any living creature. The horses felt it. They moved differently around her, softer, more willing. He watched her one morning work a 3-year-old that had been giving him trouble all fall. A sorrel colt with a tendency toward explosion at unexpected moments, and she had him moving quiet and collected inside of 40 minutes with no more drama than a conversation. Silas watched and didn't say anything, but Harriet was beside him, and he felt her look at him the way she sometimes did when she was thinking something she wasn't going to say out loud. He knew what the thought was. It was the same one he was having. Cora ate supper with them every evening. She was not late once. She was quiet at the table, not the sullen quiet of someone keeping a secret, but the quiet of someone who listens before they speak. She asked Harriet about the kitchen garden, which herbs came back and which needed replanting. She asked Silas about the history of the double pine, when they'd come, how the land had changed, where the water ran in the bad years. Harriet told her things she hadn't thought about in years. She didn't examine why. But there was something Cora didn't talk about. Not evasively, not with the sharp deflections of someone hiding something criminal. More the way a person leaves a window closed, not because they're ashamed of what's behind it, but because the room is still cold and they're not ready to open it yet. She'd come from Missoula, before that, somewhere else. She'd worked horses since she was 16. Beyond that, silence. The careful, respectful silence of someone who has learned that her own history sits too close to the surface to be handled carelessly. Harriet let it be for a while. One evening in November, with the first real snow outside and the fire going and Silas reading by the lamp, Harriet set down her mending and looked at Cora across the table. Where did you come from, she said, before Missoula? Silas looked up. Cora was quiet for a long moment, looking at her hands. Not the silence of someone choosing a lie, the silence of someone choosing the right entry point into a true and complicated thing. Idaho, she said finally. My husband's family had a horse operation east of Boise. Quarter horses, good stock. We'd been building it for 4 years. She paused. He died, she said. Fever 2 winters ago. Fast, faster than either of us understood until it was done. She looked at the fire. I tried to keep it running. I knew the horses, I knew the operation, But I didn't know the business side. His brother handled that, and after Owen died, his brother decided I was a liability. What did he do? Harriet asked. He was patient, Cora said. The word carried something in it, the particular weight of someone who has learned that patience can be a weapon. He waited until I'd used most of our savings, keeping the operation solvent through the winter. Then he produced a document, a partnership agreement Owen had signed 2 years before, that gave the brother controlling interest in the event of Owen's death. She looked at her hands again. My lawyer said it was valid. I don't know if Owen understood what he was signing. I like to think he didn't. She stopped, started again. I had the horses and what I could carry, she said. I've been working stables since. Trying to. She paused. I don't entirely know what I'm trying to do. I just know I can't stop yet. The fire moved in the grate. Harriet picked up her mending. You've been trying to find something worth stopping for, she said. Not a question. Cora looked at her. Most people are, Harriet said without looking up. There's no shame in it taking a while. And that was how that conversation ended. Not with resolution, but with the kind of acknowledgement that is sometimes more useful than resolution. The acknowledgement that says, I see you, and what you're carrying is real, and you don't have to set it down until you're ready. Silas went back to his book, but he had stopped reading. His name was Harland Pruett. That was how Cora said it when she told them 2 weeks later, simply and without drama. There's a man named Harland Pruett. He may come here. They were at the supper table. Silas set down his fork. Tell me. Pruett ran land acquisition in the Bitterroot Valley. Not a rancher, a collector. He bought distressed properties, sometimes by waiting for the distress, sometimes by creating it. He'd had his eye on the double pine for at least a year, Cora said. She'd heard his name in Missoula before she'd ever come south. He was known for a particular method. He found out what a place was short on, and he arranged to make the shortage worse. He'll know I'm here, Cora said. I've worked for 2 ranches he later acquired. I don't think that's a coincidence. Silas was quiet for a moment. You think he sent you? No, Cora said steadily. I think he knew where I was going and let me go because he thinks I'm part of his plan, whether I know it or not. A woman alone, no references, no history he hasn't shaped. He expects your neighbors to know that and to wonder about you for taking me on. Harriet set down her fork. He expects people to question your judgment. Yes. Silas looked at his wife. Harriet looked back at him. 38 years of marriage had made this its own language. What does he want with the double pine? Silas asked. The water, Cora said. Your creek run is the best senior water right in this section. Whoever holds it controls irrigation for 3 operations downstream. She paused. He's been buying the downstream properties. He needs your water right to make them worth what he needs them to be worth. The room was quiet. He'll come, Cora said. Let him come, Silas said. He came on a Thursday, 2 weeks before Christmas, with 2 men behind him and the easy bearing of someone who has never had to do his own difficult work. Harland Pruett was 50, well-dressed, with the soft confidence of a man who wins by outlasting. He came to the front porch and spoke to Silas with the patient tone of someone explaining something sad. This winter's going to be hard, he said. I'm hearing it from every rancher in the valley. I want to make sure you have options, Silas, that's all. He did not seem to notice Cora, who was standing at the corner of the barn with her arms folded, or he pretended not to, which is a different thing. The double pine isn't looking for options, Silas said. It never does, Pruett said gently. Until it has to. He looked at the house, the barn, the pasture, the look of a man taking inventory. You're running this place with one hand short since August. Everyone knows it. Winter's going to find that out. It's already found it, Cora said. Pruett turned, looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, exactly. More like the look of a man who has found that the piece he needed is not where he left it. Miss Finch, he said, I didn't know you were here. I expect you did, she said pleasantly. A silence. I manage operations for the double pine, Cora said. Any offers regarding the property should be put in writing and addressed to Mr. Greer's attorney in Missoula. I'll get you the name before you go. She looked at Pruitt with the same steady quality she used on green horses, not aggressive, not afraid, just present, just clear. Was there anything else? One of the men behind Pruitt shifted in the saddle. The other was looking at the barn, then at Silas, then back at Cora, with the expression of someone recalibrating a situation they'd had mapped out differently. "You're making a mistake," Pruitt said to Silas, "letting sentiment dictate business." "I'm letting good sense dictate business," Silas said, "same as always." Pruitt looked at Cora for a long moment. "This isn't finished." "I don't expect it is," Cora said. "You're welcome to come back in daylight. I'll have coffee ready." Pruitt turned his horse. His men followed. The three of them rode back down the road, and the sound of hooves faded into the cold gray afternoon. Silas stood on the porch until the quiet came back. Then he looked at Cora. "You weren't afraid of him," he said. "I've been afraid of him for 2 years," Cora said. "I'm tired of it." She picked up the rope she'd set down and turned back toward the corral. "It's a different thing than not being afraid, but it looks about the same." That evening, Harriet brought out the good china for supper. She didn't explain why. She didn't have to. After the dishes were cleared, Silas brought out a bottle of rye whiskey from the shelf, where it lived between occasions that warranted it. He poured 2 glasses and then looked at Harriet, who raised an eyebrow, and he poured a third. He pushed one toward Cora. She looked at it, then at him. "I want to talk to you about something," he said. "Harriet and I have been talking this past month." "All right." "This operation needs a manager," Silas said, "not a hand. Someone who knows the land and knows the water and knows the horses and knows how to stand at a gate and tell a man like Pruitt to put things in writing." He turned his glass in his hands. "I'm 64 years old. I can still work this ranch, but I'm not going to be able to work it the way it needs working for another 10 years. I knew that going into this winter." Cora said nothing. "I want to offer you a partnership," he said. "Not wages. 30% of the operation, structured as a working partnership with option to purchase the remainder at a fair price when Harriet and I are done. I have a lawyer in Missoula who can draw up papers that Pruitt and anyone like him can't touch." The room was very quiet. "Why?" Cora said. Silas looked at her. "Because you went into the mud for Pearl without being asked. Because you found the line blockage by listening to the pipe. Because you stood at that gate tonight and you were not afraid, or close enough to not afraid that it made no difference." He paused. "And because this land deserves someone who'll take care of it the way it needs taking care of. And I think you will." Cora looked at the table. Her jaw worked once. Then she looked up and she didn't look away, and whatever was in her face, she let it be there. The way an honest person lets a true thing be true. "I'll earn it," she said. "I know," Harriet said from the other end of the table. "That's why we're asking." Pruitt came back in January, as expected, with a lawyer and a different document and the patient tone of a man who has simply been waiting for the right moment. He found Cora at the corral gate and Silas at the barn, and 2 horses saddled in the yard because they'd seen him coming up the road 20 minutes before and had not hurried. "The Double Pine is operating under a registered partnership agreement filed with Missoula County," Cora said, before he'd fully stopped his horse. "Any acquisition offer should be directed to our attorney of record. I'll write down the address." She looked at him without particular heat. "We've got work to do this morning, so if there's something else." There wasn't. Pruitt looked at Silas. Silas looked back at him with the particular expression of a man who has worked a piece of land for 31 years and is not going to explain that to anyone. Pruitt left. He did not come back after that. The winter was hard, as Silas had known it would be. 3 weeks in January, when the cold came off the mountains with real intention, cracking the water lines and keeping the horses penned and making every morning a negotiation between what needed doing and what cold that deep is willing to allow. Cora worked through it without complaint, which Silas noted without saying so, because that was how respect moved between them, in what was observed and not said, in what was done without being asked. By March, when the snow came off the south pasture and the creek ran clean and the horses moved back out to the high meadow, Something had settled over the double pine that had not been there in a long time. Not happiness, exactly. Something quieter and more durable than happiness. The sense of a place that has found the people it needed and the people that needed it. Harriet still had her hard mornings. She didn't talk about them, and Silas didn't ask, but Cora noticed the way Cora noticed most things. And on those mornings, she appeared at the kitchen door with some reason to be busy nearby. Mending tack, sorting grain, being without making anything of being. It was a gift Harriet accepted without acknowledgement, which was its own kind of acknowledgement. Cora wrote a letter in February. Silas saw it on the table and didn't ask. She told Harriet about it one morning in April, sitting on the top rail of the south pasture fence watching the horses move through the new grass in the long spring light. "A man in Missoula," she said. "We knew each other when Owen was alive." I didn't answer until February. She was quiet for a moment. I didn't know if I should. I didn't know if I was ready to be someone who. She stopped. "I don't know what I'm saying." "Yes, you do," Harriet said. Cora looked at the pasture. "You didn't know if you were ready to be someone who had somewhere to come back to," Harriet said. "Someone with a home to offer." A long silence. A meadowlark started up in the far fence line and worked through its song and stopped. "When Silas and I came to this valley," Harriet said, "we had nothing but each other and a deed to land we hadn't seen in winter yet. The first year I thought we'd made a terrible mistake. The second year I knew we hadn't. But it took something. It took having the place, working it, building something that needed us, before I understood what I was." She looked at Cora. "You know what you are now. That's new, that's recent. Give yourself a minute to know it before you decide what comes next." Cora didn't say anything. Below them, the horses grazed through the bright April morning, moving slowly through the new grass with the unhurried confidence of animals that belong exactly where they are. Somewhere in the near pasture, the 3-year-old sorrel colt that had been trouble all fall was moving beside the gray mare, easy and calm, as though trouble had never been his nature at all. "Wrote back," Cora said finally. "Good," said Harriet. They sat on the fence rail for a while longer, not talking, watching the horses and the light and the long valley opening out to the south toward the mountains, still carrying their winter white on the high peaks. There are people who drift for years and never find the thing that stops them. And there are people who drift and find it all at once in a muddy pasture on a Tuesday morning, when they say the right true thing to the right person and something clicks into place that had been loose for longer than they knew. Cora Finch had walked through the gate of the Double Pine Ranch with a tired mule and nothing else she could be sure of. She had not known then what she was walking toward. She had only known she couldn't stop walking until she did. That is sometimes enough. I think about Cora a lot. Not the dramatic moments, not the gate confrontation with Pruett or the night the partnership was offered. I think about the smaller things. The way she went into the mud for Pearl without being asked. The way she listened to a water pipe to find where something had gone wrong inside it. The way she showed up at a stranger's porch with nothing but what she could observe and what she could do, and offered both without apology. That's the part that stays with me. There's something in how this story unfolds that I can't call coincidence, because it isn't. Cora didn't find the double pine by accident. She found it because she kept going. Because after Owen died and the land was taken and she had $30 in a mule, she didn't stop being the kind of person who notices when a fence is down and a water trough is cracked. She kept her eyes open. She kept her skills sharp. She kept walking, and eventually, she walked through the right gate. That's how cause and effect actually works most of the time. Not in one clean moment, but across 100 small choices that you're making even when you don't know you're making them. Cora made a choice to be useful rather than bitter. She made a choice to be honest about what she'd lost. She made a choice to stand at Pruett's face without flinching, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she was tired of letting the fear make her decisions. Those choices weren't invisible. Silas saw them, Harriet saw them, the ranch saw them in the way that places register the people who tend them. What gets me is the integrity of it. The old word, the one that means wholeness. Cora was the same person whether or not anyone was watching. She fixed the barn roof because the barn roof needed fixing. She rebuilt the water line because the water line was wrong. She checked Pearl's leg and walked her in a circle and told Silas exactly what she found. No performance, no angle, just someone doing what they actually know how to do, the way they actually know how to do it. That's a rarer thing than it sounds. And the intelligence she brought, not book intelligence, but the deep practical understanding of how things work. How a horse's fear needs to be met before you can address anything else. How a man like Pruitt builds his power by waiting for exhaustion. How the right words at the right moment, said calmly and without heat, are more effective than any show of force. She had learned all of that the hard way, through loss and years and miles of road, and she didn't waste what the hard years had taught her. I think that's what Silas was really offering when he poured that third glass of whiskey. Not just a business arrangement. Recognition, the acknowledgement that someone who has been through what Cora had been through and come out of it still capable of going into the mud for a stranger's horse. That person has earned something. That person is worth something real. The drifting ends when it ends. Sometimes you don't know the moment until you're already past it, but it doesn't end by accident. It ends because you kept being worth stopping for, even on the days when nobody was watching and nothing was guaranteed. Cora kept being worth stopping for and the right door opened.